About the normocytic anemias. This is going to be an overview to normocytic anemias, and then we're going to do different examples of it. So these anemias are more in number, so we're going to have a couple of videos about it. So normocytic anemia is where your MCV is equal to 80. So there is the RBC cells are of normal size, right? Now this could be due to two reasons. Either it could be due to peripheral destruction, right? The cells are being destroyed either within the vessels, that's called intravascular, or some other in extravascular way in spleen or liver. And it could be due to underproduction because bone marrow is not producing enough RBCs, right? So here is an important concept of reticulocytes. What are reticulocytes? So in erythropoiesis, if you go back to your bare basics, I'm not going to do a detail of bare basics, but they are basically young RBCs that are released from bone marrow, and then reticulocytes are matured in the blood cell or blood vessel, right? So these are basically young reticulocytes. Now, important concepts here is that bone marrow is going to respond to anemia by increasing the reticulocyte count, right? So if you have less amount of RBCs here, of course your bone is going to produce more RBCs, and that's how it does it. It's via RCs. It increases RCs. So it's common sense. So, but how do we calculate? So we calculate reticulocyte count by percentage of RBCs. So we know the RBC count, and then we take out the percentage of RCs from the RBC count, right? So we cannot individually calculate the reticulocyte count. We need RBC count, and then we do the RC count. So if we have any kind of anemia, what will happen that RBCs will, because it's a percentage, right? Now I explain it with the numbers right here. If we have a total of 100 count, right? This 100 is RBC plus RC, right? So this total 100 that the machine has read, the test that we do, that RBC plus RC, it is giving us a total percentage, right? So RC is then of course a percentage of RBC. Now in case of any kind of anemia, especially normocytic anemia, if RBC decreases, 100 is going to remain constant. So if, for example, we have initially we had 60 RBCs and we had 40 RCs, it's going to remain 100. But in case of anemia, if this number 60 becomes 20, then the count is going to still remain 100, and RC is going to become 80. So this is a pseudo report. It's actually false raise in reticulocyte count. So what we do it, we correct it. We correct the RC count. We correct the RC count by multiplying RC with hematocrit divided by 45, right? So now if this count, the corrected count is more than 3%, this tells you that there is good bone marrow response, which means that bone marrow is actually producing more reticulocytes. So it's good from the bones. They are fine. They're doing their job. Because they're doing their job, this means that the problem is somewhere else. The problem is in the blood vessels. The problem is peripheral destruction. But if your test shows less than 3% of corrected count, this shows that there is a problem within the bone marrow, and there's poor marrow response, and you have underproduction. That is so cool. Now we do that concept. That concept is important so that we can interpret the lab values correctly. Now, I also want to discuss about the peripheral RBC destruction in this video. So, peripheral destruction, we call it hemolysis. Now we talk about hemolytic anemias. All right, these are all hemolytic anemias. It could be intravascular, and it could be extravascular, right? So in extravascular, the RBC destruction is done by the reticuloendothelial system, and these include macrophages of liver, spleen, and lymph nodes. Important, these are the sites. This is the reticuloendothelial system. So how it's done easily. It's very easy. We have macrophages. The macrophages are gonna engulf RBCs, and in the RBCs, when they're engulfed, we know the RBCs have globin chain. The globin chain will convert into amino acids. The heme will be broken down into iron, and it is going to broken down into protoporphyrin, right? And the protoporphyrin, the iron is then recycled, and protoporphyrin is then converted into bilirubin. This is biochemistry. It's simple stuff that we have done over and over again, right? So now what will labs show you? These are overall labs for all the extravascular hemolytic anemias. We will have anemia, of course. With anemia, we will have anemia with splenomegaly. We have anemia with splenomegaly, and then we're also going to have jaundice because, see, protoporphyrin is being broken down. We have bilirubin, and also because of overload of heme, then that is a compromise that will cause unconjugated bilirubin. And then, of course, because there's a lot of bilirubin due to jaundice, we're also going to have risk of gallstones, right? And then we're going to have marrow hyperplasia, and that is going to give you increased reticulocyte count that's more than 3%, right? Now we talk about intravascular hemolysis. In this, we have the destruction of RBC within the vessels, because we're going to talk about in the future videos how that can happen, like in sickle cell anemia, because there could be any kind of problem with the RBC itself that is going to let it to get destroyed. But here we're going to have labs, really, because we're going to talk about its causes and its process in the future videos. The labs are going to include hemoglobinemia. We all know this is an important concept right here, you guys. Okay, I'm just going to write it full. The important concept is that hemoglobin cannot be in its free form in the blood. It is toxic. Okay? Hemoglobin in its free form, just floating around, it's toxic. We don't want that. Hemoglobin should only be within the RBC, and if God forbid it is not in the RBC, it is still in the blood. It is then bound with proteins. Okay, so then next we're also gonna have hemoglobinuria, which means globinuria in the urine, right? Hemoglobinemia is in the blood. The HB is in the blood, and HB is in the urine. It's called hemoglobinuria, and it is also gonna have hemosideruria. Hemosideruria. Now, what is this? Now, this means that when the hemoglobinemic blood is filtered from the the tubules, the renal tubules, the tubular cells, are gonna take up hemoglobin, and this hemoglobin HB laden tubular cells are gonna store the iron also and the hemoglobin, and this is gonna then become hemosiderin because it has iron, right? And when the cells containing the hemosiderin are shed, that is called as hemosideruria, right? And of course we're gonna have decreased haptoglobin. Haptoglobin is gonna decrease. What is haptoglobin? Haptoglobin is the protein that I talked about. It's the protein that I talked about that binds hemoglobin. Now, why it's gonna decrease? Because in the blood vessel, there is, destruction of the RBCs is exceeding the amount of haptoglobin present, Hg present. Okay, that's why haptoglobin is gonna fall short of the required amount, because it's so much RBC is being destroyed, it just cannot keep up. That's why its serum level are gonna decrease. Free levels of haptoglobin are gonna decrease. And that is it. Now further we are gonna talk about the types of anemia. We're gonna first do the extravascular hemolytic anemias first. Thank you so much. See you in the next video.